Hello and welcome back to Checkpoint Radio. It's episode 7 and well, it's been a pretty turbulent couple of weeks in the industry and it feels like only yesterday we were talking about Star Wars Jedi Survivor's woeful launch. But just when we thought a AAA game launch couldn't get any worse, stepped forth Redfall. And at this point, I don't even think turbulent is an accurate description of the tirade of negativity currently aimed at Xbox. But before we get into that, let's introduce everyone. Ben, how are you doing?
Very good, my friend. Thank you very much. I had a lovely little weekend away with my fiancée to celebrate her 30th birthday. So I've downloaded Tinder to look for some new non-30-year-olds.
Just past her sell-by date.
Yeah, you know. But yeah, really nice. Just a little romantic little getaway. And
where did you go? What did you do?
So where we live is, it's one of the British Isles. And we found this, it's basically like a hobbit home, a hobbit house.
Wow.
So it was like this big mold, these loads of molds, and just like a little tiny room carved into this mound.
Oh, nice.
It was lovely, actually. Really nice, really well sort of thought out and designed. And it was all fenced off around you. So you had your own little garden as well. And
nice and very
hot
nice.
tub.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, and it was all very sort of nature first. So there was everything was focused on recycling. And everything was focused on like renewable energy, and it was lovely. But then I was sort of whacked out the laptop, smashed out a load of research because it's a big topic we're covering today. So
you've got to be prepared for this one. You know, you've got to dive deep into what's going on at Xbox at the moment.
Big time.
But yeah, well, next up round our virtual table, Connor, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I've just been working since the last episode. Finally slugging through Elden Ring. Not slugging through Elden Ring, but getting through Elden Ring.
That's not a slug, mate. It's a joyful time, that game.
It's a brilliant game. And finally putting the time in it deserves. And then this week I managed to get a PS5. So I've been trying out
lovely stuff.
Well, hey.
Very nice.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
what games have you been playing?
The PS5 is good.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the SSD, actually. Like the load up times are brilliant. Visually stunning. I've played Horizon and Ragnarok, which I'm really enjoying. More of the same, but it's a formula
Well, if
that
aim
works.
broke, don't fix it. I mean, the first game was brilliant. So
I'm glad I haven't played that.
And I'm just the most impressive thing is the controller. I think the DualSense is fantastic.
Yeah, do you like it?
Yeah, I really like it, especially like in Horizon. Like you'll walk over some rocks and you get like slight little vibrations, like you're walking over gravel and stuff like that. I'm impressed with that. And when the bow pulls back and you get the noise through the controller, and then the right trigger like tightens up, it's really impressive. So yeah,
very nice,
very nice. And rounding out the Checkpoint Radio crew, Mr. Charlie Ruiz, how are you doing?
Hello. Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. Not a lot to report this week, other than
standard week at work.
Well, I've been getting up at 4:30 in the morning, and then I'm trying to look after myself a bit. So get to the gym for 5, work out for an hour, and then go have a shower at the gym and go off to work.
Oh, very
so
I've
been getting home.
Good for you.
Getting home after work, but just being shattered. So I've not really done a lot outside of work. But
that kind of like new sort of schedule takes a lot of getting used to. But when you get into the swing of things, I'm sure it's going to reap its rewards.
I hope so. The worst part is so today and yesterday, I wake up at 6 a.m. So I just want to lay in. I can't.
Yeah, your body's like, you've been waking up this time all week. Let's get up.
Yeah. But no, other than that, all good.
Nice.
What about yourself, James? Anything new to report?
Well, no, same as you, really. Pretty standard week. Just been working. Slowly making my way through Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I'm a little bit annoyed, actually, because when I got the game, obviously everyone was reporting all these problems with the game, performance issues. I was, I guess, one of the lucky ones, never really had any problems with the game. But EA released a patch on Friday, I think it was, and it's completely fucked my game. Like it crashes literally every 10 minutes now, and I just can't play it.
And
so
it wasn't
I don't know
crashing
what they
before?
Did. No, I hadn't had one single crash before. I had the odd sort of frame drop, but nothing like what other people were reporting. So I thought I was quite lucky. I'm going to be able to play the game. It's going to be great. But they released this patch, and I tried playing it this morning, and it crashed 3 times within the space of about 40 minutes. So I don't know.
sad.
I'm going to see how it goes, but we'll see. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, New Zelda's just come out, so I might just switch gears and get on that instead. Because
that's like 10 out of 10, isn't it? Getting like 100%.
Yeah, I've got the game. I bought it because I couldn't resist not buying it because I love Zelda. So I played about 2 hours of it, but I want to complete Star Wars before I move on to Zelda. So I'll try and get that done if I'm able to. If the game will stop crashing and I can get through it, hopefully. But so anyway, it's nice to catch up with you guys as always. But got a lot to talk about. So had a couple of weeks now to let the dust settle somewhat around this whole Redfall Xbox situation, the fallout, and the reaction to that Phil Spencer interview, which we'll be getting into as well. So let's talk about it. Where's it all gone wrong for Xbox? I guess we'll start with Redfall.
Yeah.
Ben, do you wanna get us going?
So Redfall is Bethesda's newest release, part of the acquisition, so exclusive to Xbox and PC. Came out on June the 13th. Oh, no, sorry. Came out May the 2nd. Was originally meant to come out on June the 13th, 2022, but obviously delayed. We were all hoping, I'm sure the whole world was hoping, that a delay means that a release is perfect, and the game was far from it, receiving Metacritic scores ranging from the mid to low 50s, and the reception all round just wasn't good. I've got some quotes. Some PC Games says the writing failed in making me care about its characters. VG247 said the only tying progress to the host was a mistake. Games Radar said repetitive campaign. It's just a case of which version of the mission structure it will be. And IGN really sort of went in and said an undercooked looter shooter by every metric, with bland missions, weak combat, and repeated technical problems. And I couldn't agree more with pretty much all of those statements. James, Connor and we jumped on and played some on day one, and then I think a few days later, and you should have seen our live stream. We were just going in, and it's such a shame to see, because Arkane Austin, known for some of the, I wouldn't say the best games of all time, but some very strong games, like Prey, for instance.
Dishonored.
Yeah. Great track record.
But this product was just everything but good.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that the story would be enough to keep me interested, but it's just not the case. And the game, I think the biggest issue for me is just how underpopulated it felt. Like the game's lifeless, and not in a good way, as in vampires and that. But it's just there's not enough there, and the AI. So stupid.
The AI is probably
just rubbish.
The AI is probably the single worst thing about the game for me personally, because not only, like you say, quite rightly so, Charlie, not only is the game barely populated by enemies, when you do come across enemies, they are the dumbest enemies you've ever met.
Yeah.
And you'll be standing right in front of them. They won't see you. They won't shoot you. They won't react to you. For some reason, there's like I don't know if it's a bug or just bad AI sort of programming. They'll lock onto maybe one person in your squad, and they won't realize you're there after they've kind of found that one player to go after. That'll be it, and the rest of you can kind of like just walk around and do whatever you want because they won't bother you.
I found instances where I think you and I were playing, James, after Connor had jumped off because Connor had enough, and rightfully so. I was shooting some distant enemies and deliberately missing and shooting them at their feet, and there was just no reception,
no response,
or reaction. Yeah, it was.
Like you can shoot one of them like right next to another one, and they won't respond.
And
you can
that's it.
Turn up the difficulty settings as well, and it changes nothing AI wise.
It just turns them into bullet sponges.
They take more damage and they give more damage. There's no...
Yeah.
They don't get smarter, nothing.
Yeah. For those of you... I mean, I suppose we jump straight into it, but for those of you who don't know, so Redfall is the new FPS from Arkane Austin. It's set in a vampire overtaken town, and it was meant to be their first... Well, it isn't meant to be. It is their first attempt at something different from their usual sort of library of games. So open world, co-op, and a bit less linear than everything else that they've done in the past, even though all their games are sort of semi-linear. the whole game just failed in many different regards. And I put together a little list, if you want to hear, of some features that I feel like the game could have maybe benefited from different games.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know what you think about this. Something that James might have heard us mentioning in the stream. So I think that imagine if you had some form of hunter, like Left 4 Dead, who would spawn in out of sight and make a noise, and he or she would be hunting you, this vampire hunter, encouraging you as a group to stick together, because for some reason the game has got a feature where if you stick together you get some like group benefit, and if you separate then this benefit goes away.
It's like a trust thing. Is your trust? It says, your trust with Layla has increased, or your trust with Devinder has increased, or whatever. But it's kind of pointless. Like, it doesn't really mean anything.
That's it, because the empty expanses just encourages you to run off like a headless chicken with not a care in the world. So there's no real sort of focus on sticking together, because you can just go out and find 2 enemies in 10 minutes each, and
you can go and do one objective. I can go and do another. James can do another. There's no sense of danger. So I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, so I think adding like some form of hunter to keep the group together would be great. I think, and very obviously, making nighttime even more dangerous, like Dying Light. Doesn't that seem very...
That kind of feels like a bit of a given. If you're in a town sort of like overrun with vampires who thrive at nighttime, they can't go out in the sunlight. I know they block the sun out or whatever, but still at nighttime, it should just like ramp everything up. Like the nighttime is if you're in a vampire infested town, nighttime is the one time of the 24-hour day that you don't want to be outside in. You want to be in your house.
Yeah.
Where the vampires can't get you.
Yeah, and there should be some feature of like, it's night time, you shouldn't go out, you can go to your bed and rest and wait till morning and be less sort of in threat. I feel like there should be NPCs out in the world who need assistance, like State of Decay. Like, imagine walking into a town and then there's like screaming civilians running away, and you can intervene and kill the pursuing vampires. And then if you succeed, you'd be like, cool, we've got the fire station ready to go, you should meet us there.
But it's like the safe houses you kind of take back. Like, you expect there to be survivors or people in there, maybe, but they're empty, and all you're doing is clearing out the cultists or the occasional vampire that might spawn there.
Yeah. A couple more. Another State of Decay one, just infested houses, just like you said, James. When you go to these houses, these safe houses, they're just completely dead. So I want to see infested houses where there's like vampires,
like a nest,
just like a little orgy going on.
But they're not, because I'm sure. Because granted, I've not played. I played a little bit with you guys, and then I'd had enough of it. But so, I'm sure I read within reviews that there are like almost like dungeons.
Oh, maybe we didn't make it that far.
Yeah. I think so. I think that is.
Oh, we kind of found something, didn't we? We sort of found like a cave that had like the red mist, and then there was like a big sort of thing hanging in the middle, but like nothing really happened.
Oh, okay.
There.
Yeah, because the only reason I said that point is we had to go and clear out a house in one of the sort of. We walked past a house and it had like an icon in it to go in.
Yeah, there's nothing in there.
And we were like, we were taking our time to sort of search every room and sort of like proper
expecting to sort of be jump scared,
swatting it through.
Yeah. I thought you'd go into like the basement and there'd be like a vampire and they're asleep and you're waking him or something, and it kicks off, but nothing
triggers. So that's why I said that point. I also think 2 more points. Sorry.
Okay.
Having hordes of human cannon fodder. This town has been absolutely taken over by vampires. The vampires surely must have. Obviously, you have the people who are like the cultists. But what about just the pure civilians who haven't been killed but have been recruited to be just cannon fodder?
There needs to be a different variety of enemies, like different enemy types. That's a really good point, actually.
The cultists could have been roaming around in like armoured vehicles, or
that's my last point. Having patrols of humans like Far Cry.
Yeah, or like a horde system, like James said. Like you recruit enemy, you could have a horde system, maybe not as deep as what Days Gone is, but some sort of like threat that even in State of Decay 2, you get roaming hordes. That go around, some sort of threat.
It's interesting. Well, to not kind of harp on about Redfall for too long, because we know that this game's got its faults in terms of the gameplay and well, actually, I don't think the graphics are too bad, but there's a lot of things wrong with the game, bugs, all sorts. But this is Xbox's first $70 AAA exclusive there's a lot of questions about how this game made it to this state, a lot of which were addressed in that Phil Spencer interview, which I guess we should move on to now. But the fact that the game was sort of left to kind of fester in this way, it feels like no one at executive level at Xbox was overseeing. I'm not saying they should be micromanaging, but surely someone says that you're coming up to the end of your 1 year extension to get this game finished. How's it looking?
Where are you?
Let me come over there and play it.
Yeah.
Where you at on it? And I guess there might be a bigger problem here at Xbox. They have a real kind of hands-off approach with the developers. So going off of what Phil Spencer said, I've actually got a quote here, and he was sort of backing up Arkane a little bit and saying he doesn't want to argue about a team's creative direction, So he said, one thing I'll fight is what went wrong. There are clearly quality and execution things we can do, but one thing I won't do is push against creative aspirations of our teams. I'm a huge supporter of Arkane Austin. Their track record is awesome. I love a lot of their games that they've built. They didn't hit their own internal goals when it launched. I think it's maybe a little simplistic to say if you would have delayed it 3 months, the core creative of the game would have delivered on something that was different from what it was, which I agree with. Like, I don't think any sort of delay is going to fix this game.
Yeah.
But in the lead up to that, where's the management? Where's the quality control there?
Yeah. Especially when you consider, for instance, this was 30 FPS capped for their console,
That's
an exclusive game, for £70.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
No first-person shooter should release at 30 frames per second.
Not an exclusive that's 70 quid.
Well, and in that interview as well, Phil talks about the fact that they sold it as being a 60 frames per second capable game.
Yeah.
To people, and if it's an Xbox game, you expect that to be on an Xbox console.
Yeah.
They know full well that it wasn't, that it was only going to be 30 frames.
Yeah. And
it's just a bit disingenuous.
Going back to your point, James, about Phil sort of defending it, well, sort of saying about the creative sort of decisions of the team. I understand, because I went back and I had to rewatch it a couple of times to fully understand what he said in regards to like finding technical issues about a game, you'll then delay it, but then having like creative problems and not hitting those creative vision, then what do you do in that regard? Because it sounded like, well, that's something you don't delay for. Is that what he kind of said? Like, because it sounds to me, or maybe he was withholding what he wanted to say, because maybe that's a more drastic situation that's best not said in public, where if you have a game that isn't hitting the creative direction that you've had years to achieve, then what do you do in that instance? Do you just release it and then hope to improve it with like customer or player interaction and feedback?
Yeah.
Or is it worse to completely scrap it? Because there were so many reasons why they knew this game was crap before it came out. For instance, they lifted the embargo 2 hours before the game released, the review embargo.
Yeah, so they knew.
That's evidence that they knew the game wasn't going to get a good reception, and they wanted to hold that back for as long as possible.
Well, he also said in that this is the kind of funny Xcast interview that we're talking about, which came out last week. It's a really good interview. If anyone's listening to this and they haven't watched it yet, I'd go back and listen to that. It's interesting because Phil Spencer, like, he says a lot of seemingly honest things, but there's also like a bit of a lack of kind of fight from him in some ways. We'll get onto that shortly though, but I just wanted to mention one other thing in regards to Redfall. So in that interview, he talks about how they brought on staff members from the coalition to help Arkane Austin build the 60 frames per second mode for the game. And he said in the interview, if we wanted that ready by launch, we should have started that back in autumn last year. And it's like, I don't understand why he said that, because that makes him sound a little bit incompetent. Like, hindsight's all well and good and everything, but what are you doing about it at the time? Like, when action needs to be taken, why are you kind of like letting Arkane just get on with it, knowing full well they're hurtling towards a fucking cliff with this game?
Yeah. And that's quite
maybe
contrary.
That's the problem. Maybe they didn't know that they're hurtling towards
they
a
must
cliff.
have known.
And that
They
is the
must have
problem
known.
because they're obviously not hands-on enough.
It's been internally reviewed, which they scored it at like 70 out of 100. So they knew the game was... They reviewed it as okay. It's not great. The game's been delayed by 10 months, 11 months. So in those 11 months, did like the previous build, did they go and look at it and go, oh, it's only at 30 frames, you've said it'll be at 60. Did they not go, right, do you need help then? Why does it take till the end of last year before they go, oh, do you want us to, we can send the coalition over if you want. Like, where's the communication? Surely someone at Xbox has played a previous build of it.
Yeah.
Well, and also, is there something to be said about the studio as well? Surely if they know the target is 60 frames and they're struggling, they should go to Xbox and go, we need help.
Bigger issues at this, because this game was going to be a PlayStation timed exclusive, same with Deathloop. And then Bethesda came in, and Xbox came in 2021, said no PlayStation. So then if that game's only being built for PlayStation, there's issues there. Yeah. So that takes time. This game's a year away from being an 8.
Yeah. Also, as well, I found out that the founder of Arkane actually left in 2017, which was apparently around the time that Redfall was starting development.
Has it been in development all that time?
Yeah, literally. Suspected to have been in development since August 2017, before the Xbox acquisition.
Okay.
So the head, I can't pronounce his name, Raphael Colantonio, he left in 2017, reasons unknown. I think everything was amicable, but maybe not.
Well, maybe just moved on.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
That's it. But maybe it was just his vision. Maybe, obviously, this is the Deathloop came out in 2021, but obviously that would have been deep in development. So if Arkane started working on Redfall in 2017, but there was a point you made earlier, James, that about Phil and like Xbox's involvement in the development of Redfall, where it's kind of contrary to how my image of Phil Spencer as I've been doing research on him, because he's he seems like a guy who has incredible foresight, like looking ahead into the future, and obviously trying to plan ahead and see how things go. Like he works in this like 3-stage system. Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3 is apparently his thing. So he's planning. Horizon 3 are like things that he's planning for that might be 10 years in the future. But his defense is like, if you're not planning for stuff for 10 years in the future, what happens when 10 years in the future comes and you haven't planned that far ahead? So I take that sentiment and then look at Redfall and then think about the whole getting the 60 FPS ready for release all the way back in August, did you say?
Yeah, they would have had to have started development or work on that in autumn last year to get it ready for release.
Yeah, autumn, sorry. Where's the foresight there?
Well, I think...
did he know?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ben, and it's interesting, but I think it's a combination of things. I think we talk about this hands-off approach that Xbox have got with their developers. I don't think Xbox leadership, Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, I don't think they have that approach with Playground Games. I don't think they have that approach with The Initiative. I don't think they have that approach with Ninja Theory, who are making Hellblade. All these like real high-profile games. The fact that Bethesda and Arkane were already working on Redfall, it's sort of like they saw the game midway through development and thought, we're going to leave those guys to it because they know what they want to do. And that's partly Xbox's fault. They shouldn't have done that. And, you know, there's a whole discussion as well about where Arkane fall into this and the responsibilities they have, because, like, I'm not going to be one of these people that sort of says, well, the developers are completely innocent. I don't think they are completely innocent. I think they have to take some of the blame for releasing this game as it is. Whether that involves pushing back at Xbox again and saying it's not ready, or realizing that they're biting off more than they can chew, because that studio has never made a co-op open world shooter before. Yeah. So they have to take the responsibility on themselves and say, maybe we need a bit of help with this. Yeah. Anyway, getting slightly sidetracked now, but I completely lost my point. Sorry about that.
No,
I think the biggest issue Xbox has is they've acquired 16 to 17 studios in 5 years. It's too much growth. They can't handle this many studios. They've got projects at all the studios going on now. No one's just, barring Redfall, nothing else has come out. So they've got all these games lined up, raring to go. You can't manage them all.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's why it feels like the hands-off approach isn't a decision and more of like, well, we have to be hands-off.
This is what it is.
We can't manage this many studios. They have like 30 studios now, don't they? Or when
22 or 23, I think.
Yeah.
It'll be 35 if they acquire Activision.
Like, like you said, is the hands-off approach just a byproduct of having so many studios to manage?
Too many eyes, not enough fingers.
Yeah,
exactly.
So,
well, there is. I know we're kind of saying like we don't want to focus too much on what potentially could be rumors, but there is enough sort of repeat behavior here to start to paint a picture of what could be going on at Xbox Game Studios. And like a lot of people this week in particular have been questioning whether Phil Spencer should stay in the job. I personally think he should stay in the job.
Me too.
Because I think that, like you said, Ben, about the Horizon 1, 2, and 3, whatever it is, like the long-term sort of sight for Xbox, they have a plan, all right?
Yeah.
And as much as this is kind of like, you know, gamers will be sick to death of hearing this. You know, the games are coming, there's a plan in place, trust the process. I mean, Connor and I are football fans. We hear this all the time from managers, from fans. Trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. Yeah. You can only trust so much until you have to start delivering on the things that you're saying are coming.
It's coming up to a decade under Phil, and it's a decade of disappointment. No AAA title in 2022. I know the pandemic caused issues, but you look at their competitors. Tears of the Kingdom's just come out. Sony, who have been quiet in this console generation, Horizon, God of War, Spider-Man 2 at the end of the year, potentially. And that's them being quiet. If you've got 9 years without big AAA titles coming out, why should your ecosystem trust you?
But I feel like what James said as well is also my opinion in the fact that this, like, his vision for the future has still yet to pay off, I feel.
Yeah, but what's his plan for now? It's been 9 years of shit.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's the issue. I like Phil Spencer. I like Phil Spencer a lot. I thought he shouldn't have done that interview. That interview's damaging for the brand. He's obviously been beat up for the last couple of days.
Yeah.
He wears his heart on his sleeve, and I think he's generally wants the best for Xbox, but the spark's gone.
Pretty much what I was going to say. Like, I like Phil Spencer, and I like what he's doing with Game Pass because it's good for me personally. But I do think it's time for him to maybe go, because what he's doing now just isn't enough. And the interview says it all. He's given up. He's admitted defeat.
I don't think he needs to go. I think he needs more players around him to help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
it just feels like he's given up. Like, there's a quote, and he says, "We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or Nintendo. There's no real solution for us to win." Like,
yeah, and
it's a bit defeatist.
It is defeatist, and you know, we kind of said at the beginning that the interview, there were some insightful things that were said in that interview, some very honest things, but there was like an overall perception of like a lack of fight from him and Xbox in that interview. Like you just said, Charlie, that's quite a telling thing to say. We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony and Nintendo. But on the flip side of that, I kind of understand where he's coming from when he says that. Because, you know, he goes on to sort of say, there's no world in which Starfield is an 11 out of 10 game and everyone sells their PS5s and gets an Xbox, which I think is also true. I don't know if...
But if Starfield isn't a system seller, what is? Skyrim is one of the biggest games of all time. Fallout 4 is ginormous. 76, for all of its issues, there is a large player base there. Bethesda, Starfield could potentially be one of the highest selling games of all time. So if that's not going to shift your console, why are you bothering?
Yeah. But then
because sorry, Ben, go on.
Well, I was going to say, well, that leads us to maybe their next focus, which is Game Pass.
Well, yeah, that is the focus, isn't it? Game Pass is the focus, and streaming is the focus, because, like, they're not going to sell more consoles than Sony or Nintendo. They're just not, and they know that. So, you know, this whole idea of bringing rather than the gamer coming to Xbox, they're bringing the games to the gamer instead.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
If they didn't want to sell consoles and all this, then why would they take Starfield and Redfall off of PlayStation? Surely you would take the player base and the sales.
But Because
obviously
so there's a couple of things to that. Firstly, we know that PlayStation and Xbox don't make any return on hardware sales. They don't make any money. It's all a loss. We know that it costs more for them to develop the consoles than what they get back from it. So when you consider that fact, and then you consider the fact that PlayStation is already outselling the Xbox like 4-1 or something, is there much kind of like, what can you gain from fighting Sony on that front? Really, what can you gain realistically? Because you're losing money to make the console in the first place. But Microsoft, traditionally being a software technology company, maybe they're doing what they know they're good at doing, and that's delivering software and services.
Then why make the games exclusive? Because they can take Sony's money.
Because they're going to need people to come onto Game Pass, aren't they? They're going to need people to get Game Pass.
Yeah, that's the focus, isn't it?
The people are going to need a reason to get Game Pass. And if that reason is Starfield...
But they're still going to put it on Steam. So that's stopping people from Game Pass. You can put it on PlayStation and get potentially 38 million units sold.
They could just give up the consoles altogether, still buy up the developers, and then sell the games.
Like, I understand your point, Connor, in regards to like, why make it exclusive? But I feel like for me, like for them, it's like you have to get an Xbox, or you play it on Game Pass, and then you can play it on your phone if you wanted to, or you can stream it to your TV. And regardless, they're still getting like 100% of all that you've put in. If you buy the game, great. If you go to Game Pass, because ultimately, where they have the power to control where that game goes, they're just it's the caliber of game where they have to flex it. And I understand, like, it makes total sense for it to go to PlayStation entirely. Like, why are you going to cut yourself off to all that like source of revenue and income? And it's also a bit surprising when they're fighting the CMA right now about not making their first titles first party stuff that they own exclusive. So it's a bit sort of, well, why is Call of Duty any different to Starfield? It's probably going to be just as big. But I feel like for them, Game Pass is their like ultimate goal now. It just everything seems to be pointing to Game Pass, and they need those high profile games for Game Pass.
If in the current state of Xbox, if they're releasing one AAA title every 2 years, I can pay £10, play Starfield for a month, cancel it, and not come back until the next one.
Yeah,
there's a major issue there, and I understand.
But there are going to be people though that will like. I've got Game Pass for PC. Okay, so when September 9th rolls around and Starfield comes out, I'll play the game, and if I like it, there is a very high chance that I will just buy it on Steam, knowing that then I'll have it permanently and I won't need to worry about maintaining my Game Pass subscription. Yeah, really. Because I did exactly the same thing with Valheim. That's another example. I went and done 50 hours of Valheim on Game Pass and then bought the game on Steam and done another 200 hours on Steam because I love the game that much. And, you know, there's this big conversation, and like, I don't think we won't get into it too much because we don't actually know the ins and outs of like the contracts that are made with publishers for Game Pass. There's a big conversation about like sales and how publishers and developers are paid when their games are put on Game Pass. We don't know the ins and outs of that. But for me personally, if Starfield is good, I think that Bethesda, you know, I'll pay them for the game. And Game Pass for me is kind of like, it's what, £7 a month? It is. It's not really. It's nothing for me. And if for me that means having access to like 200 games that I can play as and when. The ones that I really like, I might buy them. Yeah, and that's just like that's one of the perks of Game Pass, I suppose. Like it basically gives you access to all these games that you can trial as and when you please, and buy them if you want or not, or just keep your Game Pass subscription and keep playing.
Yeah.
But then there's an underlying issue. If Starfield's bad, then they've lost all this money.
Well, okay, let's talk about Starfield then, because obviously after the whole Redfall thing, the next big exclusive for Xbox this year is Starfield, and now it feels like there is an overwhelming amount of pressure for Starfield to be nothing but a 10 out of 10 game.
Yeah,
it has to deliver.
It's got to be, hasn't it? And I hope, and there's no hope about it, they must have taken, like, you would have thought that every studio out there would have learned from CD Projekt Red's mistake with Cyberpunk, for instance. Like, how could you not? the reception that game got and the damning it did for the company was immense, even though they seem to have kind of brought it back. And obviously there have been many games prior to that came out bad and
they took a massive hit with the shareholders as well.
Yeah, it was monumental. So you would have thought every game sort of post Cyberpunk would have learnt from that lesson. Obviously they don't. So there's no way. They will be shitting themselves more than anything else about Starfield.
Yeah.
That game's going to sell like hotcakes regardless. It's going to sell like absolutely bonkers mental. It's going to break records. It's going to.
Yeah.
But they need to nail it, because then it becomes a serious... If Starfield comes out fucked, Phil Spencer's gone, guaranteed.
I actually agree with that. I think if Starfield has a bad launch, then there will be pressure on Phil Spencer to maybe step down. I think he's okay for now. I think he's pretty safe for now. But as for Starfield itself, I think there's a massive difference between like Starfield and Redfall, for example. Like nothing we saw of Redfall in the lead up to that game's release alluded to the game being good. And that sounds harsh, but like it just looks like a bland open world co-op shooter. Starfield, from everything we've seen about it, has got the bones and the potential of possibly a really, really great game. It has that because you know it's Bethesda's first brand new IP in 20 years or whatever.
25 years, yeah.
25 years I've been cooking up this thing for. It's got like base building, ship building, new engine, 1,000 planets you can visit, a deep sort of like story that changes the landscape and the things around you. Everything you kind of know from a Bethesda game. But the actual guts of that game seems way more promising than anything we saw from Redfall. So I think
Redfall is kind of like hoping that it's got something to it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, maybe it'll be fun playing together.
Exactly.
Looking at Starfield,
that's like a quadruple A game. That's what it's hyping it up to be.
You look at Starfield and think that is a next generation game. Like everything, like, not just talking in terms of graphics or whatever. Because in all honesty, I think that game's going to release, and I think it's going to be capped at 30 frames per second on a console. I don't think that game's going to be running at 60. But
it's not.
I think people will accept it because I feel like the game is going to be. If they can pull it off, it will be a special game.
No, it will but be. I can't accept it. Because for me, that game has to release and it has to be visually fucking stunning.
Yeah.
And it can't be a framey 30
I know
shit. It needs to be 60 at least.
It's old footage, but I think Digital Foundry looked into the last lot of trailer and there's a lot of cuts in it, so we don't even know what build they're using. That game doesn't run above 19 frames a second. I know it's 14, I know it's 14 months old now at this point. There's going to be issues
from like an announcement, but it is too framey. Like, I wouldn't be able to enjoy that game and appreciate it in all of its glory at that level of frames.
Yeah, but then is that kind of like the PC player in you talking? Because I completely agree with that, but I'm not going to be getting the game on console. As selfish as that sounds, I'll be playing it on PC where I will be playing it at 60 FPS
but
more.
This is the bigger issue at Xbox. Phil Spencer said in that interview, the console people in our ecosystem they're the most supportive, they're the most loyal. They're the ones getting fucked over. It's okay for us. We can go and download it on Game Pass. If I don't like it, I can delete it. And it's going to run better than 60 frames a second on my PC. If you're stuck with an X and they haven't optimized it properly, or even worse, if you're on an S and it runs out of VRAM, which is happening in old games like Borderlands 3, you are completely fucked over.
Yeah.
And not everyone can afford a $2,000, $3,000 game PC.
But I think, like, technical difficulties aside, obviously Redfall had lots of technical issues, but then it also had a lot of those creative issues. The story was shit and the world was rubbish. Like,
I just missed the mark.
Yeah.
So everything about that game was a miss.
So I feel like Starfield, needs to be like running really good. But even if it is capped at 30, if the story's on point and the world is insane,
the features
and no
and
bugs,
the things you can do.
Yeah, I would pick that with a 30 FPS cap. Like, if they could just make sure that everything about the game is so good. Like, the story is memorable and amazing and exciting. The fighting feels great. And I know 30 FPS wouldn't give you that feel as such, but as long as they could nail everything creative and everything about their vision, I would take that with with 30 FPS cap every day because that's where Redfall failed. Redfall failed in every respect: bad performance and bad creative, like direction, vision. Yeah. But Starfield just needs to nail everything about the creative side of it.
Yeah.
Like, it needs to run great too, for sure, but it needs to be everything about, because they said, what's the Bethesda dude?
Todd Howard.
Todd Howard.
Tony Howard.
He said, yeah,
Tony
he
Harris.
Said, yeah, he said, looking at Skyrim, and Skyrim is like obviously his baby.
Yeah.
Skyrim is a 10-year game. People have been playing that game for 10 years. He said that they're taking that same approach with Starfield. People need to be playing Starfield for 10 years.
The only way there's bugs in Skyrim that came out in 2011 with the game, and they've re-released that game 7 times, and there's still those bugs in it.
Yeah,
those games only last because of the modding community, and that's fantastic. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point in the creation engine, though. Like the whole reason these games are made was because Bethesda wanted the community to be, I guess, as big a part of extending the life of the game as they put into the game to make it playable for years and years and years.
I understand that, but if it comes out and there's massive issues with the game and they're like, oh, the modders have fixed it, that's not good game design.
That happened with Fallout, didn't it?
Yeah.
Most of their IPs.
All of their games.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I do feel like this game looks a lot nicer than... I don't know whether I'm wrong in thinking this, but my opinion of Bethesda games are that graphically a bit meh.
They're not good at all.
But it's the story.
Starfield, I think it actually does look like it could be quite graphically nice.
Yeah.
Well, like we said earlier, they've updated the creation engine, so they're on the creation engine 2 now, which is what Starfield has been built on. Another interesting thing about Starfield development in regards to that Phil Spencer interview and what he said that they managed to get into the room with Bethesda and Starfield a lot earlier than with Redfall, which I think is a little bit strange. Like, I think Xbox made an active decision to choose to make Starfield as great as they could and maybe neglect Redfall a little bit, because I think like we kind of like, we're not sure about like, when did Xbox get involved? When did they see the game? At what point did they kind of think to themselves, what the fuck is this? Like, it seems like they didn't think that at all. They let the game come out. I kind of feel like Redfall was thrown under the bus a little bit so that Starfield could fly.
Yeah.
A little tinfoil hat moment.
Well, it's maybe, a little bit of because, sacrifice, isn't it?
Yeah, because they talk about like, they have this thing at Microsoft Xbox called the Advanced Technology Group, ATG, and it's like I don't know what it is. It's like some group of people.
I can tell you.
Okay.
So according to Digital Foundry, the Xbox Advanced Technology Group is responsible for Xbox's robust dynamic resolution scaling, a bit of tech wizardry that allows game developers to sacrifice resolution instead of frame rates. So since the new Xbox consoles use APUs, which are accelerated processing units that share both a GPU and a CPU, there's a bit of an age-old battle between frame rates and resolution. The dynamic resolution scaling is then used to maintain specific performance targets. So like the X and the S then take this concept a little bit further, using variable rate shading, which is basically a way to boost a game's performance by letting the GPU control how much processing power is used within a frame, but on like individual parts. So that you can have your more important parts using up more of the power, and then say you've got, I don't know, a tree in the distance or something that's like a simpler part to render.
So
like you can use less power on it.
So the Advanced Technology Group, their kind of thing is implementing this technology across the games, is it? Okay, that makes sense.
And what were you saying, James, about where Xbox is using this this group, for instance?
So apparently, well, not apparently, in the interview, Phil Spencer said that basically they got to Starfield a lot sooner. It was easier for them because it was earlier on in development than Redfall. So Redfall was already like quite a long ways into development,
Yeah.
which I don't know if those timelines kind of match up really, because Starfield's been in development for like 2 decades and they only bought Bethesda a couple of years ago. I'm not sure like how that works in terms of like what he's saying with getting in there with Starfield and being able to help them from like a more critical point.
Yeah.
But then Redfall was apparently too far along in development to be helped. I don't know.
Xbox and Bethesda have had like a 20-year relationship. Even before the acquisition, Bethesda were using Xbox as their primary developer console. So every time Bethesda were making a game, they made it for Xbox, and PlayStation was like behind.
That's changed recently though, because Starfield was potentially going to be a PS5 timed exclusive, like Deathloop and Redfall was going to be as well before the acquisition.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, they've got a good working relationship. They've worked together for a long time.
Yeah,
but how
I think
long's
maybe
earlier in the development? That could have been this January by the sounds of it.
But maybe earlier means like just as early in regards to their acquisition. Maybe they got like the acquisition happened and then it was like, cool, let's look at Starfield. We don't care about everything else you're making. Let's look at Starfield.
I mean, that makes sense. Like if Starfield's going to be this next big thing from Bethesda, maybe they thought, right, let's get in there, get this game sorted out, so that when it launches, it's going to fucking blow people away.
That's
and
it.
Redfall maybe was just like one that they could sacrifice and not really concentrate on as much because it'll come and go, and then that'll be it.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
I mean, the pressure's on.
The pressure is certainly on. One question I wanted to sort of, take to you guys and bring to you guys. Do you think Xbox are focusing too much on Game Pass and cloud at the moment, and perhaps neglecting AAA game development?
I think it's.
Go on, Connor. You go first, because I can go. I've got quite a lot on Game Pass.
At the moment, I don't know. Obviously, with all these acquisitions that have gone in the last 6 years, they don't know where they are with these games. Some they've bought and they're 75% into development. Sometimes they're 15% into development. Xbox with Game Pass is their unique selling point at the moment. That's what they've branded on, which is great. Yeah. It's wonderful. It's very good for consumers. But if you scratch a little bit deeper and you look at PS Plus, it's pretty much the same model. And there's more games on Game Pass. Granted, it's a similar price. But to get these people into your ecosystem, you need first-party games.
You need the exclusive titles, yeah.
Yeah, which Sony don't have, do they?
Sony do have. Xbox don't have. Like,
I suppose.
If you go into PlayStation,
because PlayStation they don't launch their games day and day.
Yeah, that's like
they don't leave them day one because then they get that money immediately. This is obviously Xbox are going down the Netflix route, and that's fantastic. It's a subscription model we haven't seen in video games. But then if they do release Fable, how many sales do they lose out on? I know they get people in, but those people might play that game for 2 days and then go, yeah.
I think
but we don't know about like the contracts and what's offered. Like we said this earlier, we don't know about how payment works, whether there's like a bonus for how many players play the game, how many players download the games, what percentage of players have unlocked half of the achievements, for example. We don't know any of that stuff. But I agree, there's not really much of a difference between PlayStation Plus and Game Pass. But this is one of the things that like people will criticize Xbox regardless of what they do. They get shat on by fucking everyone at any given opportunity, no matter what. But one thing I think they have got right is Game Pass. I think Game Pass is a fantastic service. I think Game Pass is probably the best deal in gaming right now.
100%.
And I don't think anyone will really disagree with that. But
I think
they've ignored their ecosystem. They've ignored the core gamers. They want to be Netflix. They want 100 million subscribers. Yep. And Game Pass is fantastic. They've got 25 million subscribers. PS Plus is at 47.4 million subscribers. Why? Because they've got the games.
I feel like with Game Pass, like something you said earlier, James, about where the Xbox are like bringing the games to you no matter where you're playing. And I feel like that's Game Pass's focus. So, for instance, if there's apparently like 3 billion gamers in the world, and I very much feel like Xbox are trying to get Game Pass on so many people's phones and TVs and external devices, such as that new Asus ROG Ally handheld device. They want to be able to open up their service to billions of people, not just like 20, 30, 50, whoever million. Like there's apparently 3 billion gamers in the world, mostly mobile gamers now, who don't have Xboxes, don't have PlayStations, definitely don't have PCs. And they are trying to sort of tap that market. And if they can tap the market and get Xbox Game Pass on everyone's phone, making it run, like if they can get, I don't know, I'm still sort of on the fence about cloud gaming, but even if it is like getting Game Pass on someone's phone and you could download the game to your phone, or getting it on your TV, which is hardwired into your home, or getting it on the handheld device, which is downloaded. They want the Game Pass to be on everyone's device. But I feel like the way they executed Game Pass is, to me, the most impressive thing. Because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like gamers are the first people to kick up a fuss. Absolutely, about anything. If something changes, or if something's new, or if something's different, people don't like it. They don't. As soon as they see a company coming in to try and be money grabbing, there's no way they break through that barrier of like public approval.
Yeah.
So how on earth would Game Pass like go to the masses and say, here's a service you have to subscribe to? Like, unless they did the 3 or so things that they did, and they did it so good. Low price, loads of games, and all the extended features of like streaming it and whatnot. So if they came in with a sort of like, I don't know, £15 a month price with no games and like no additional services, Game Pass would have been in the bin before it even got started.
Like Google Stadia is exactly what happened to Google.
Exactly. Google Stadia, you still had to buy the game on the Google Stadia. There was no way to play and test and anything like that.
Yeah.
Also, as well, another thing about their launch, which kicked them off excellently, was Xbox Game Pass was a service that they only allowed their loyal, if you like, Xbox Gold members use. So, and then they completely relaxed on advertising, apparently. They didn't want this to be something that you find and see on all your YouTube adverts and all your TV adverts. This was a completely word of mouth advertising, like campaign, yeah. So it was getting the players who got the service, realized that it was kind of like a great deal, and then tell their mate. And that's literally how Game Pass...
then you're only going to get good.
Yeah,
like,
and then if
you throw in a couple of like, refer a mate and they get a 3-month subscription.
Yeah,
throw
that's
in a
it.
couple of those, and all of a sudden your fucking Game Pass subscribers are multiplying.
Yeah, and that's how they did it, by sort of not plastering it on your TV and you just skip past it like it's another money grabbing scheme. But if your mate comes to you and says, "Oh, there's something called Game Pass and it's got all these games on it, and I don't have to buy a game now. I can just download it for free." And if, like you did with Valheim, download it, like it, buy it, play it forever.
There's an inherent issue with Game Pass, and I think they're future-proofing Xbox, which you brought up earlier with like the horizons. Like Game Pass is going to grow for the next 10, 20, 30 years. They're going to be on every device. They're going to be on Samsung fridges, whatever they're doing. The problem is they've ignored the core gamer now.
Yeah.
So, and I know potentially there's talks that documents have leaked that there's an next Xbox in 2028. They might scrap that. I don't think Xbox will be releasing consoles in the next 10 years.
I think they'll do another one. I think
they'll do one more.
Yeah.
And then it will be cloud. It'll be on your smartphones. It'll be on your tablets.
You know, so that's interesting, but there's a couple of things to consider here. Like, I'm not an Xbox fan, but I just want to make that abundantly clear. Like, I have an Xbox. I've got a Series X. I've got a PS5. I've got a PC, and I've got a Nintendo Switch. Probably tell from that I fucking love video games, and I'll play them wherever they are all the time. I love gaming. I've got the choice.
James.
Well, I've got, I'm grown up now. I've got a good job. I've got money, so I can buy the shit that I could never afford when I was a kid. That's the luxury of being an adult. You spend the money the way you want to spend it, and this is how I spend some of my money. So I've got no foot in any camp.
No.
But let's not forget, right? Game Pass made PlayStation rethink their whole game subscription service. They fucking binned off PlayStation Plus and bought out a game library because of Game Pass and the impact it was having. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say was that when Xbox moved into this kind of new generation and they brought up all these new studios to release all these AAA games, how long does it take to develop a game now?
6-7 years. Like a
5
AAA
years
time.
minimum for like a AAA game.
Yeah.
It takes 4 or 5 years minimum, 6 years maybe even longer. If you're looking at Red Dead, 10 years in the making that was. Cyberpunk, same amount of time. So they buy up all these studios at a similar time. Now they're all working on AAA games that are going to take 5 or 6 years. Then there's COVID in the middle of that. So 2 years, nothing happens. And coupled with the fact that they're making a bunch of new AAA games, a bunch of new IPs with no previous existing assets to work on. There's no like first entry in this trilogy of games. They have to build everything from the ground up. There's a reason why these games are taking so long to come out, and I'm not trying to defend Xbox here and say it's acceptable, because it's not fucking acceptable. We should have got some of these games by now. Do I wish Starfield was out by now? Yes, I do. Do I wish Redfall released next year and it was a good game? Yes, I do. Because ultimately, when a game like Redfall comes out and it fails, it's bad for everyone. That taking a risk on a brand new IP and it releasing to mass fucking hysteria and people shitting on it is bad for other developers who want to release a new AAA IP. People aren't going to invest because they're going to look at Redfall and be like, it's a risk. Yeah, it is a fucking risk. Game development's not easy. But bringing it back to what I was saying, there's a reason all these games are taking so long. And Phil Spencer has this kind of like, he has this thing where they want to be releasing a high profile AAA game every sort of 3 to 4 months. And if all of the games we're kind of looking at in the future, Starfield, Forza, Hellblade 2, Avowed, Fable, Perfect Dark, Everwild, State of Decay, Compulsion Games new game, In Exile's new project, Gears of War 6, Indiana Jones, the list literally goes fucking on and on. If they get to a point where they can start banging out these games, everyone is going to be looking at Xbox completely differently. It's going to be a completely different situation. Yeah. And I think now there's been a lot of reactionary commentary on Redfall, a lot of people calling for Phil Spencer's head, but I don't think that is necessary whatsoever. I think he's had enough good faith over the years to just push through these next sort of 18 months to 2 years and to see where Xbox is. Have they made mistakes? Yes, they've made a lot of fucking mistakes. Have they lied to the gamers? In some aspects, they have also lied to the gamers, which is a shame. You know, you can't go to you can't bring out some big game conference and say everything here is released in the next 12 months and delay half the fucking games on the list. That's bullshit. So, you know, and quite rightly so, they're being held up to that. People are not happy about it. But I'm one of these people where I don't want to call for people to be fired. I don't want to say Xbox needs to become a third-party game publisher and close down its fucking game development studios. I don't want that, because at the end of the day, I want Xbox to succeed, because that makes PlayStation want to be better to compete with them, and that means that we get better games. Why on earth would you want Xbox to close down? You wouldn't want Xbox to go off the map, because you need that. PlayStation needs that competition to make better games.
That's why
we benefit from it.
That's why they've been so good. The PS4 was as great as it was, is because for the majority of the 360 PS3 cycle, Xbox had their foot on their throat.
Exactly.
But Xbox have walked away from what made them great. They had
they have
250, 260 timed exclusives, third-party exclusives, and Xbox, Phil Spencer pissed and moaned in that interview about, we can't do the deals PlayStation did. 360 was littered with third-party exclusives. You've got the fucking money. Instead of buying studios and having to deal with them, you go to a From Software, you go to Devolver Digital, whoever.
Say, we want your game for the next 12 months. Here's the cash.
What was Sony offering you? $2 billion, we'll give you 4. Fuck it. Like,
I feel like
they can do those deals.
I feel like this is the first time that I don't know if you boys will agree with this or not, but I feel like this is the first time where Xbox and PlayStation are kind of branching off into different paths. So in the past, from like Xbox 360 to the PlayStation 4 and on so on to up until this point, they've both been like sort of fighting the same fight. Whereas now I feel
it's been
like,
about console gaming before, isn't it? It's all about console, it's all about the games.
But I feel like now their strategies are starting to change drastically. So, for instance, I feel like, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I've written something here which says, with two differing strategies, one seemingly based on value. So, for instance, that's Xbox. They want you to be able to have all your games at all times, all backwards compatibility,
everywhere
playing
you go,
on all devices, on everywhere you go. Yeah. Whereas the other, PlayStation, maximizing on technology. PlayStation were very apparent that their next-gen games are going to be mostly next-gen PS5 only. Whereas Xbox have very much said that all of our games will be available for Xbox One and obviously the Xbox X and S and PC and everything else. PlayStation are very much like, okay, in the future, I think Horizon Zero Dawn came out on PS4, but it was always meant to be a PS5 exclusive, apparently. But the DLC was... Anyway, from maybe a year or two on, every
set like
next
a
gen
cut-off
game
point where it's only going to be next gen.
Yeah,
it causes an issue now for Xbox though.
But that's it.
It causes an issue now because with the third-party deals that we brought up, developers have already moaning about the S, and they've got the X, which is the most powerful console in the world. There's no ifs and buts about
it. Maybe the Series S was intended to be like a Game Pass machine originally, just a streaming machine.
Xbox need to cut ties with the S and X, and that's not a bad thing because most games will come to the S. They will get them on there.
They'll stop making consoles eventually, and everything will just be streaming for them, and that's obviously what they're aiming towards.
They want as many games as they can on Game Pass, and they can't do these day one deals because of issues with the S. Square Enix wouldn't put Final Fantasy 16 onto it because they couldn't get it onto the S. If they put the S like with the One, they cut ties with it, and it comes to the S 3 months later, and then these developers can come in and work with this absolute beast of a machine, they can get more games onto Game Pass, and that gets more people through the door. It is an issue they need to look at.
Yeah,
I feel like we're going to be seeing some in the future. I feel like you'll be going for PlayStation for the top tier next gen exclusives, and I feel like you'll be going to Xbox to fill your library. And I feel like that's like you'll be going because, for instance, again with the Game Pass, you have the ability now to play loads of smaller titles that you'd maybe never have picked up or wouldn't have wanted to spend £10-15 on. That's obviously their filler, but it also gives the smaller devs and the indie devs the ability to get their games out there to the masses without
some exposure.
Publisher problems.
The best games that have come out on Game Pass the last 6-7 months have been Grounded, which is Obsidian, Pentiment come out to 10s, and Hi-Fi Rush, which all fantastic games, but they're small.
Yeah, small.
What you would call AA games.
AA games and indie games. Yeah.
And they've been brilliant. And that's what Xbox are looking at. They've got Idea Xbox, I think it's called now. It used to be.
Yeah, Idea Xbox.
So it makes sense, but there are glaring issues with AAA titles. But like James said, I think in 2 months, not 2 months, 2 years, this isn't an issue.
Yeah, so like we've talked about this for quite a while. So to kind of close out the conversation, to move forward a little bit, how do Xbox recover? I think this is a pretty simple question. They just need to get these games out the fucking door.
Yeah. And ultimately, we have to do what they've asked over and over again. Is we unfortunately still just have to wait.
Yeah,
they need to get the games out the door, but in a good state,
but not broken.
Because you can't be releasing Redfalls over and over.
No. Doing my research, there's one thing I found that did put a negative thought in my mind, and it's coming out in 2021. Xbox do internal reviews for competing games.
Okay.
And they reviewed The Last of Us 2. So this is a couple of years now, but these games have been developed for a long time. This is an excerpt from that. The visual quality and attention to detail in The Last of Us Part 2 is absolutely best in class in basically every area. They did go on to moan about Naughty Dog's gun combat, which I found quite funny. The overall presentation is significantly ahead of anything the other teams have been producing on console and PC. So that's talking about their own games. That's a little bit worrying. I know it's a couple of years ago, but if there's no faith in some of these developers...
Yeah. Well, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. I mean, I don't know if anyone's watched that Hellblade 6-minute gameplay video.
Unbelievable.
But it looks fucking unbelievable. The graphics are just... It's so next-gen that you almost... It looks like a cutscene. It looks so good. And I'm not trying to sort of fanboy and hype it up, but the question is, like... Well, not the question, but like the sort of lingering sentiment is... They need to just deliver on this now. They've shown us great promise. Like you can't deny that the games that have been teased, there's potential for some real great games there. Fable is a beloved franchise that people would love to see return. Hellblade 2 is a technical marvel. Well, the first one was a technical marvel. The second one looks like it's building on that. Starfield, obviously, that looks like it's got the guts of a really great game. They just need to deliver on this now. Gamers are sick of waiting, and it's fair enough. I agree. It's been a long time coming, but like we said, in a year, in 2 years' time, this could all look completely different. If you know, Starfield, Hellblade, Avowed, Forza,
Indiana Jones,
a couple of these other games, if they come and they're all 8, 9, 10 out of 10 games, this will be a different conversation. This is going to feel so weird talking about it like this.
That's it. And it's almost like I started to go down an idea in my research of like, is there like a cycle? So like in the PS3, Xbox 360 era, it was like the Xbox 360 was out on top for numerous reasons, such as the PS3 had a bad showcase, the Xbox had a more powerful GPU at the beginning, and there were lots of exclusives. And then it was the PS4 era where the PS4 was cheaper, more powerful, way more exclusives. And then obviously the PS4 era's fed into this current era where everyone had the PS4, so everyone's getting the PS5. But are those tables about to turn again? Because, well, like you said, James, if these exclusives come out and are top tier, then I'd be a bit worried. But
that's the thing that we're kind of like sick of saying though. Maybe.
I think
there's no certainty.
We want it to sort of hurry up and get
patience
to it,
have already gone with some gamers. They can win these games.
You can't blame them though, can you? Like,
no, there's
it's fair enough for people to
something that come out in a Sony internal call about like PlayStation sales and stuff. 30% of PS5 owners never owned a PS4, which is and 30% of Xbox is 30% down in console sales in the past year for Xbox. So obviously there's some significance there. Obviously some of it will be people getting their first console. But people are going to who they trust right now.
But if you did have loads of, like Phil Spencer said that great games aren't enough to win it. I think that he's wrong.
Yeah,
I think that if you did have a good library of amazing games, there are people that haven't managed to get a next-gen console yet. Maybe they haven't been able to afford it. They're saving up, whatever.
Shortages.
If you've got, a library of great next-gen games, it might be enough to sway you to go, actually, I'll get the Xbox.
Yeah.
But I think one thing for certain with these game delays that needs to happen is there needs to be more updates on them.
Yeah.
Because there's games that were announced in that 2021 showcase.
Haven't seen anything.
That they got delayed, but we've not heard anything for a year.
Well, speaking of the showcase, we've got a Xbox event on June the 11th, followed quickly after with the Bethesda Starfield event. At this showcase, they need to show something. Well, not something, but a lot of substantial things. We need to see more gameplay for Avowed. We need to see more gameplay for Hellblade 2. We need a firm release date for Forza, and we need some new projects to get sort of excited about. And then games like Fable and Everwild and State of Decay, we need serious kind of updates on those as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, it's been a bit of a rough week for Xbox, I guess, and hopefully it's going to get a bit better for them, because ultimately, as the games come out, if they deliver on what they've shown us, we all benefit. So, okay, well, that was a pretty full-on, interesting talk about Xbox. Where do they go from here? Only time will tell. Hopefully, they can deliver on some of these games that they've teased and shown us. But as we're coming to the end of the show, I thought we'd end on some more listener questions, because it's always nice to hear feedback from people who listen to the show. Those of you that have sent us a message or an email, thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So first up, we have a question from Dan on Instagram, and I'm not sure if this is the same Dan who wrote in last time. Nevertheless, the question is, if the four of you were to make a game together, what would the working title be? And what part of production would each of you work on?
Ooh.
Interesting.
Interesting.
What could we cook up between us?
And just behind the scenes, we've not discussed this at all, by the way. Like,
I know what I would want to make if I can put an idea forward.
Okay, go on.
I would want to make a tactical shooter, a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
I'm sick of COD. I hate it. Battlefield shit. I want to make an actual decent military shooter.
Yeah, me
I'll
too.
make a couple of calls. We'll get Black. We'll get the rights.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Let's do
We
it.
need to just
Okay,
reboot
Black's
Black.
the one.
Yeah.
Happy with that, Charlie?
Yep.
Well, what would you do there? So if we're gonna make a first-person shooter, what would everyone's roles be?
I'd want to be something with like the shooting side of it. I'd want to make sure the game
and, like,
feel
gun mechanics and
Yeah,
stuff.
You're out there
like-
testing guns on a range.
yeah, or just making it feel. And obviously, no technical skill. Like I have no idea how I'd actually do that, but I'd like to be because I know what I like from a shooter, and I'd want to be able to try and achieve that, or try and achieve our own feel and our own style.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'd like to do.
Any
obviously-
either of you boys got a preference for what you want to work on?
I studied game design at college, and I would do like assets and level design. So that's probably where I would go.
Perfect.
Very nice.
Charlie?
I think that Foley would be
Such
a fun
This
role
is working
to
out
have.
great.
Like,
And then-
doing all the sound. Yeah, it'd be perfect.
And I'm
be
going to
fun.
try and guess what James is going to say.
Okay. What am I going to say?
The sickest story you've ever written or heard.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, would it have a campaign, or would we just go straight for that sort of pay to win battle pass? We'll come for the Call of Duty crown.
That's it. There's only I don't know. I feel like a campaign would be really
Yeah,
good.
we definitely have a campaign.
I think the
Yeah,
campaign
yeah.
would set us apart right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
look at
first thing comes
Battlefield.
to mind, Battlefield.
Right. So
Yeah.
we'll get working on that tomorrow. That's cool.
Oh, Black. coming your
Okay,
way.
so we got another question from someone who asked to remain anonymous, and this is quite I don't actually know how to answer this. What can the gaming industry do to be more sustainable? Interesting question.
Xbox,
Sustainable. Sorry, I was just questioning sustainable in regards to like carbon footprint, or are we talking?
I'm assuming carbon footprint. Yeah.
Xbox and obviously PlayStation with their online services are doing what we need to do for this. Digital libraries first and foremost. That helps a lot. Obviously, if you are gaming a lot of these consoles now, like Xbox have lowered it and PlayStation have lowered it, but if you actually turn it off at the plug switch,
It actually turns off.
actually turns off, so it's not running in the background.
Yeah.
I've
that
got
helps a lot.
something that's negative with the sort of cloud gaming aspect of gaming.
Okay.
So apparently, one cloud gaming server center
Yep.
can consume up to 50,000 homes worth of electricity.
Over what period
It's
is
a
that?
lot.
A day.
I don't know what period that is
minute.
actually. Every minute, yeah. No, I
but
think
they have
it's
to be like cooled as well, don't they?
Yeah,
they've got to be like super
they
cooled,
Can't yeah.
I think
So
it's
there's a
more
lot
like
that goes into those.
yeah. If you take 50,000 homes, that amount of power that would charge or power those 50,000 homes is the same as what it would be to power this server center.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
where
I understood what you were saying.
Yeah, no.
I know something that Switch could do.
Okay.
The size of the game boxes for a Nintendo Switch
And the-
compared to the
Oh yeah, they're
cartridge,
massive, aren't they?
like that is a huge waste of plastic.
Yeah.
So that could change.
So one thing I think would be quite good. Sorry to just interrupt here. I think that Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo and even like PC part manufacturers should have some sort of like recycling incentive, because us being PC gamers and having built PCs, how many spare PC parts have you got laying around the house? Where do you go to get rid of that? If you can't sell it or donate it or move it on, it just sits there. And I'm not saying you should do this, but some people will just bin that stuff. And it's like there is a way to recycle consumer electronics. And I think that if Xbox and PlayStation in particular, being like the two biggest, well, not two biggest, two of the biggest sort of console brands, if they had some incentive for recycling your old consoles or your old hardware, send us back your controllers that don't work, and we can give you like, I don't know, a £10, a £5 store voucher or something. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
Well,
something
you
in
know,
that vein.
Did you ever hear of?
I wonder if you're going to say the same thing.
There's a mobile phone that the components
modular.
you could, it's modular. You could swap out the components. A console could be built in the same way. When the next console comes out, you send your old parts back, you plug the new parts in,
Yeah, maybe. I was going to say,
Awesome.
in regards to the recycling part, James, apparently I think the American government bought up as many PS3s as they could because
Right.
for like a
Building a bomb.
Gamers
yeah, they were building some
having a massive LAN party at the White House.
They were like, they needed this specific component on a board that was apparently very expensive. Like it was like literally like $20,000 per component. But the PS4 had like a very small scale version of it. But they could just buy a fuckload of I think it was PS3s. They could just buy a ton of PS3s that each had this small component, but when you tied it all together, it saved the same purpose when saving them like literally hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Wow.
So that was kind of like they used sort of recycling technology in that sense. But I completely understand your point. I thought you were actually going to say something along the lines of like generalizing the like packaging of games, so they all use one box, they all use one like container. So I don't know.
But like, I mean, I don't know how many people still buy discs, but really, could just be a cardboard sleeve, couldn't it?
It could be.
Doesn't need to come in a.
Sometimes you get the game and it doesn't even come with a disc in it. It just gives you the digital code. So you've just wasted all that plastic when they could have just sent.
Oh my god!
It's like, what are you doing?
That's a PC special. That one is it? You go into game and get like a PC CD-ROM, but there's no CD in there. It's just a fucking Steam code for the game. Pointless.
I've not been into a game or a shop and bought a physical disc in no joke. Maybe a decade. I'm not joking.
I don't have a disc drive, so
They're not fit for purpose anymore.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's interesting. Okay, so we've got one more question. This came in via email. Hey guys, big fan of the pod. My question is, can you all name your favourite and least favourite games consoles from each generation? Thanks, Hannah.
That's a good question.
What generation are we starting from?
Any?
Can you name your favourite?
Start first and go forward, or now and go backwards?
I reckon we work back.
Okay.
Oh, from each generation. Oh, I was just going to pick my favourite
PC,
all time.
PC.
Windows 98, Windows 2000, Windows XP.
That's it.
3090, 1080.
Right, so let's start with this generation then. So obviously Ben and Charlie, I don't think you can answer this because you don't have a next gen console. Connor, your thoughts?
I haven't got my hands on an X, but the PS5's a very impressive bit of tech, so that would have to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the PS5 is a fantastic console. That hands down wins it for me.
Really?
So,
and you obviously are qualified. You have them all now.
I've got an Xbox, yeah. I've got all of them.
Yeah.
I just feel like the PS5, like you mentioned it earlier, not to sort of go off on a tangent too much, but you mentioned the PS5 having this like next gen experience. Yeah. You really do get that from the moment you turn on the console. Like the UI is rendered in 4K. Clean. It's clean. It looks smart. You have like the game previews when you hover over the tiles and stuff. It's just a really, really nice experience. It's quick. It's snappy. But the Xbox, on the other hand, is clunky. It's cluttered. There's ads on your main sort of page. When you get on there, it's just a little bit of a. It's not great. It's not a good time. But yeah, so PS5. Okay. So going last back. Gen, Xbox One, PS4. I guess Nintendo Switch as well because that's still last gen.
I only had the PS4, so PS4 gets my vote.
I'm the same. I had the PS4, didn't have the Xbox. PS4. Mine.
PS4, yeah, same PS4, didn't have an Xbox One. So then before that... Unanimous, hands down. Before that, we had the Xbox 360, we had the PS3. And then we had the Wii U.
No, Wii U was...
Anyone who picks Wii U.
It would have been the Wii. It would have been the Wii.
Okay. Well, it's 360 for me. I didn't have a PS3.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say
never interested in a PS3. The 360 was like...
So I had
era.
I had the 360, and then that was when I made the switch to PlayStation, and I stopped playing my 360, and then I was exclusive PlayStation. But I had the exclusives that came out on Xbox 360 at the time were so good. Like, I remember Gears of War like it was yesterday, and such a fun memory.
That was when Xbox were in their pomp, and it was a fucking great time to be an Xbox 360 player. And then, like, obviously, online coming into play massively during that era, Xbox Live, it just changed the game. It was so good.
Yeah.
It was before that, and so
PS2.
That was then PS2 and just the OG
Xbox.
Xbox.
PS2.
I'm going to have to say OG Xbox.
I'm going X.
Because
Yeah.
I'll tell you
PS2.
why.
Had it.
So I had, was it Enter the Matrix?
Yeah.
That was
Oh,
on
yeah,
I
OG
had it on
Xbox.
PlayStation.
Well, I had it
Sick
on
game.
Xbox, but I have specific memories of playing this game over and over and over with my brother. But then having said that, the PS2 did have Black, which is one of my favourite games of all time.
I remember having so the Xbox was my first console.
Yeah.
Like my first. I think a friend of mine had the PlayStation 2 and we got the PlayStation 2 shortly after. But the Xbox was like my first console. And for me, that was just like, oh my God, this is gaming. I'm hooked.
This is gaming?
Yeah, this is the rest of my life now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Xbox gets my vote.
I love the PlayStation 2 because that was where, I played San Andreas and GTA 3. Is that PS2?
Yeah.
Vice City was on it as well.
Vice City as well.
Highest
But the
selling
Xbox
DVD
just
player
like-
of all time.
What was it about the Xbox? Like the Xbox home screen, like the dashboard.
The big green X.
It's burned in my mind, that image.
I don't remember the dashboard.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It looked like you was in some sort of weird lab, and there was like this green sort of circle, and you had
It's so
music
green.
playing. Yeah,
And then
It's
you
all
could
green.
play-
But I did.
I remember playing, putting my, was it Linkin Park Hybrid Theory album into the Xbox, fucking playing that, blasting that in my bedroom, absolutely loving it. So good.
What about before that then? For me, it's PlayStation 1.
It would have been PlayStation 1 or the Nintendo 64. What else was around at that time?
would have been
Dreamcast?
GameCube? Or was that after?
GameCube was
Oh, I
after.
had a PS1. Maybe
GameCube's
Xbox
after.
wasn't my first
Dreamcast
console.
would have been the one if Sega had actually got some games on it. That machine was beast, but the PS1
Yeah.
was fantastic.
It's got to be the OG Nintendo 64, the greatest
Never had one of those.
gaming console of all time.
You're
I just
anti-Nintendo.
remember on PS1 having like a demo disc and it had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1. And I'd just restart that over and over again, just playing that one level.
I actually
Great
think the Nintendo 64 come out a few years before the PS1, if I remember. I feel like the PS1 was late 90s and the N64 was maybe mid 90s.
I
I
think
thought it
the
was 1964.
PS1 was like 96, I think, 97.
Yeah. Well, I don't think any of us remember anything before that. So
I
Yeah.
remember playing the SNES, but I'm old.
I was going to
You
say, I
old
remember
bastard.
having a...
And a Game Gear and
What
a
was
Mega
it?
Drive.
what was that? Do you
Yeah,
remember that?
Mega
Was
Drive.
it a Nokia that was like a phone, but it was like a handheld
The
game?
N-Gage.
thing?
N-Gage.
And the N-Gage,
Yeah.
yes, I remember the N-Gage. Memories.
I want to give a
Famous.
big shout out to Game Boys as well, though.
Yeah.
Oh,
I loved my Game Boys.
Tried and tested.
I had
Can't
my
go wrong.
mum's one.
Oh, Game Boys were so good.
I had my
Game was
what
run in the family.
was after the advanced SP. That's what I
I
had.
don't think I had the
I
SP.
Is
love
that the
that.
flip one?
Is the flip one,
Oh,
like
that was
square
class.
flip one? So good.
Nice.
Great
Smashing
question.
up Pokemon.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. So thank you to all of those questions. We've still got a little pile of questions to get through, so we'll continue to read those out over the coming episodes. If you want to send us a question or a comment about anything you've heard in this episode or literally anything else, then you can email us at hello@checkpointradio.co.uk. You could also use the link in the description of this episode to find our Discord, where you can reach out to us there, as well as hang out with the community. And you'll also find links to our social media pages as well as our YouTube channel. Well, that was episode 7. Thank you for tuning in. My name is James.
I'm Ben.
I'm Connor.
And I'm Charlie. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.